Melbourne Press Club only lets us judge the Graham Perkin Award for 3 years. This is both a blessing and a curse. A blessing because it's actually quite hard work, but a curse because for the current judging panel, Jill Baker, Laurie Oakes and myself, it has been such a sheer joy to have our faith in our profession and pride in our colleagues so refreshed each year by the outstanding work that we have been asked to consider. Journalism is being challenged and enhanced by changing technology, changing deadlines and changing audiences. This year's entries in the Perkin Award reflected that diversity flowing from those changes as journalists grasp and master the art of reporting over several different mediums at once and of rethinking very traditional products. What does not change in journalism that must be memorable and outstanding is the capacity to take readers and viewers to events as they unfold and help them understand the context of those events. In our final year of judging, we really did struggle to get down to a short list of 4 and were forced to think long and hard about the winner of that short list. Adele Ferguson's work in print and on television blew open a massive financial scandal which has shaped a contentious policy debate in Canberra and affected thousands of lives. Chris Reason found himself, horribly, in the right place and the right time for one of the most dramatic stories of the year and set the standard for how such events should be covered. John Sylvester, a former Perkin Award winner, moved us with his compassion and insights into the life of the police force and dazzled us with the consistency of his wonderful writing. Finally, Phil Williams continued the excellence of his work as a foreign correspondent, taking us at great hazard into the front line of war in the Ukraine and the horror of the downing of MH17. He made a very foreign war understandable and a tragedy real. But there can be only one winner of the Graham Perkin Award, and this year it goes to Chris Reason.
After an almost 17-hour siege, an ending everyone had prayed would never come. Shortly after 2 this morning, teams of tactical response police stormed the Lindt Café from either end, guns blazing. The cafe lit up with bursts of bullets and flashbangs, stun grenades, leaving the gunman dazed and some 15 hostages terrified. These extraordinary pictures captured by a single 7 News camera, allowed back by police into our evacuated newsroom directly opposite Lindt Café and looking directly into the cafe's 4 windows. It was over in 34 seconds, and in the silence afterwards, the only sounds, cries of pain and pleas for help.
Thank you very much. I have trouble watching that vision now, I've got to say. Thanks to the judges for granting me this exceptional honour. Thanks to the Age and the sponsors for the extraordinary prize. Thanks to the Perkin family for letting me be the custodian of this extraordinary title for the next 12 months. And thanks, of course, to my fellow competitors, Adele, John and Phil. I was just honoured to be in your company. That was enough for me. Mixed emotions tonight, I've got to say. Elated, of course, but it feels awkward to celebrate when we're talking about an incident that claimed the lives of Tori Johnson, Katrina Dawson, affected the lives of the 16 hostages forevermore, and of course undoubtedly shaped the city of Sydney with its first brush with terrorism in the Islamic State age. But that, of course, is the nature of our game. This week I look back in awe at the list of Perkin Award winners, and so many of their achievements are attached to the darkest incidents. Gary Hughes and the Black Saturday bushfires, Joanne McCarthy and her incredible investigations into pedophilia. Awful subjects, but stories that have to be told. And so it was on December 15. When I walked into the newsroom on that day, I'd just finished 6 months long service leave. That day was my first day back reporting. I was in a very different headspace. I walked in and of course nothing had changed, but everything was about to. Just 30 minutes after I got there, the siege began. I thought at first it was a joke, that the news gods were playing with me. I was at the cafe next door. The Chief of Staff rang and said that there was an armed hold-up at Lindt. Feeling too old to chase police cars, I snapped back at her and asked where the bloody police reporter was. Of course, it turned out to be far more than an armed hold-up. As the Shahada flag went up, along with the hands of the hostages, the police moved in and evacuated our entire building. Now everyone kind of assumes that because of Channel 7's proximity to Lindt Café that we would have had the best coverage, but that might have been so for the opening minutes, but we quickly lost our advantage because they evacuated us. And it's actually extremely difficult to make television without a television station. So what our engineers and our techs managed to do that day really was an extraordinary moment in TV news. We had Melissa Doyle hosting the event out on the street using a wheelie bin as a desk. The news producers had crammed into the barbecue shed at the sales office on the other side of town. Stories were being cut in Brisbane and Melbourne, and the broadcast was being hosted overnight out of Perth. It was a remarkable news co-op, but in TV terms, it's about as close as it gets to 2 empty cans and a piece of string. But it worked, and I dipped my lid to the incredible staff we had at 7 that got that broadcast to air. Applause too for my colleagues who did outstanding work that day, the reporters, producers, editors, but in particular, Richard Cunningham, Duncan Farr, Brendan Roberts, Megan Miller, Gary Porter, Matt Hall, the Camos as well, Rod Herbert, Tim Stewart, Jimmy Cannon, Rattles, Craig Andrews, Paul Walker, Denty. Everyone had my back that day, that night, and I will be forever indebted to them for it. I'd like to mention too my extraordinary wife, Catherine, my children, Sam and Lucy. I didn't come home that night, like so many nights I'm away from them. I adore them and I thank them for giving me such understanding, patience and freedom to do the job I do. And finally, to my cameraman, Greg Parker. How many times over the years have you seen TV journos stand up here and talk about how amazing their TV cameramen are? Well, tonight is going to be no different. I wouldn't have got anywhere that day without Greg's exceptional genius. He was the single biggest factor in 7's extraordinary coverage that day. When the incident began and the newsroom's fight or flight mechanisms kicked in, the rest of us ran without question, but Greg turned around and fought for the story. Only an hour after the building was evacuated, he managed to slip back in with a security guard. The police caught him. He was trying to adjust some cameras, change some batteries, fix some focuses. They were going to throw him out. But he showed them what his camera could do, that 600mm powerful lens, and they decided he could stay, and that was a breakthrough. After many more hours of top-level negotiations, they finally decided to allow a reporter in. I was only supposed to stay for one cross, the 6 p.m. news, and I did that, but afterwards no one came up and asked me to leave, and believe me, I wasn't about to offer. So I stayed there for the next 27 hours. We'd been placed next to the police sniper. They gave us all the warnings that were required, that if we could see him, he could see us, that he might be carrying a bomb in that backpack. They asked if we consented to the position, and of course we only had to look across at Martin Place and look at those hostages to realise what real risk looked like. I'll never forget that night, their exhausted, hopeless faces, man Monis always ever present, lurking with the gun, and later, of course, the echoing sound of the gunshot that murdered Tory right in front of us. The words from the police sniper, "Window 2, hostage down," are words that I'll never forget. It's something that lingers with us all at 7 News. And for those of you that don't know the 7 Newsroom, it's entirely made of glass. The walls, the doors, the ceilings, everything's glass. And in the front and centre of the main glass wall sits Lindt Café. It's been bandaged up the last 3 months, workmen coming and going, but it's always there in the background of every conversation, every cup of tea that we have. It's a lingering reminder of what happened that day. Well, Lindt Café reopened today at 10 o'clock this morning. I went along to line up and grab a coffee, knowing that only in Australia could you legitimately be helping to fight terrorism by buying a flat white. I'm glad it's reopened. I applaud Lindt Café for doing it. And I thought this morning that if we did win this special prize, that I'd like to donate a fair chunk of that to the charities set up in the honour of Tori and Katrina. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you very, very much.
That's good. That's good. Well done. Ladies and gentlemen, please thank Chris Reason. Alan, Laura Tyndall, thank you. Citation? Yeah, absolutely. Laura's just got the citation as well for Chris.
In awarding the Perkin Prize to Chris Reason, the judges considered the age-old question of how great pieces of journalism can often flow from simply being in the right place at the right time, even if it is to cover truly horrendous and shocking events. The assessment of the quality of a reporter's journalism in such cases must be based not on the circumstances that brought a journalist into a particular story, but how that journalist responded. Reason's utter professionalism in covering the story of the Lindt Café siege over a period of more than 24 hours was simply outstanding. On a day when there was an excess of wild speculation and false reporting, Reason's reporting was restrained and sober, as was appropriate in covering an event in which so many lives were at stake. He didn't speculate wildly. He explained to viewers what was going on and where. He used the unique platform he literally had overlooking the scene of the siege, but he also adapted to changing conditions and access. He led coverage that was, as a result, utterly authoritative, and he did so live, on the fly, over an exceptionally long period of time. Congratulations, Chris.
Thank you, Laura.